I don't know. I forgot. I can't believe I forgot about that. That's wild. My brain trying to protect itself. You know, I have to say, though, that the subject of the male appendage has been brought up, and there have been some mixed reviews. Hello. So, the winners of the 2025 Splatterpunk Awards have been announced, and I have read all of the best novel nominees. I have 4 different books that I want to talk about, and at the end of the video, I will let you know who actually won the award for best novel. Now, normally there would be 5 nominees for this category. However, they had a little bit of an oopsie. You see, all of the nominees for the 2025 awards are intended to be stories that were published in 2024. So originally, The Home by Judith Sonnet, which I have previously reviewed on this channel, was one of the nominees. However, that was actually published in January of this year. They acknowledged on their website that this was an oversight on their part and that unfortunately it had to be disqualified for this year. However, it will still be eligible for being nominated again next year, which leaves us with 4 remaining novels to go over. I think that I will start with Benjamin by Aron Beauregard and Shane McKenzie. Now, this is a bit of a unique experience that I unfortunately was not able to participate in. I want to make sure that you guys know I read books in different ways. One of the ways that I read or consume stories, or however you want to say it, is through audiobooks. I normally would not listen to an Aron Beauregard book because there's illustrations in it. However, I just happened to have some extra credits and I chose to listen to this one without realizing that that was a huge mistake. Aron Beauregard and Shane McKenzie made this into a more ambitious project than just the collaboration of the book itself. When you are physically reading it, they actually included QR codes, apparently, that would lead to some videos or extra images, different types of immersive entertainment, I believe is how they worded it, that would help give you the vibe that they were looking for you to get from this novel. And so they added all these additional elements to make it a bigger experience than just the written word itself. So this was definitely an oversight on my part to listen to it, because as a result of that, I didn't have access to these codes and I missed out on that aspect of the experience. But because I had already paid for the Audible credit, I didn't really want to pay for the same book again. So unfortunately, I missed out on that aspect of it. But hopefully you guys, if you weren't aware that this is a unique experience in that way, you can learn from my mistakes and you can make sure that you get some sort of physical media so that you can get those QR codes to get the full experience. Now, this is not to say that the audio version of this is bad in and of itself. It was narrated by Chuck Brugge. Is that 2 E's? Or is that... It's either 2 E's or it's 1 U. Brugge? No. Chuck Brugge. He did a fine job narrating it. It's simply because of all the other things that you're missing out on that I would not recommend the audio version of this. The book is called Benjamin because it is about a $100 bill with Benjamin Franklin on it. The story is basically about following around this $100 bill. So every time this $100 bill changes hands, you are shifting to this new person's perspective. And you are getting the story of whoever is currently in possession of it. And so I thought that was a very interesting concept. According to the afterword, that was something that both Aron Beauregard and Shane McKenzie, they had separately had this idea of following around a $100 bill. So when they got together and were casually talking about it, they just figured, well, of course we have to collaborate. What are the odds of us both having this specific idea? I'm not going to get into the specifics of all the unique perspectives that you get into. Just know it kind of has the energy of a Gotham City, where it's just the inner city filled with drugs and poverty and violence. One thing that would set this apart from just a general inner city is that there is a serial killer on the loose called the Artist, who not only likes to just do that, but he will arrange the bodies of his victims in a specific way to make it as if it's an art exhibit. Like he's making a statement with his killings. So that is kind of in the backdrop of this city, and the stories do interweave to a degree outside of just the exchange of the money. A general sense of degeneracy in the city, in the lives of all of these people. Nobody is having a great time. Everybody has their own struggles, but frankly, it is kind of depressing. I don't believe I've ever read Shane McKenzie before, but in true Aron Beauregard fashion, they do not shy away from descriptions of gore and going big. It just, the whole project was very ambitious, not just because of the external media, but just the concept in and of itself. I feel like the gore in this was very satisfying. When I think about Splatterpunk, gore is kind of one of the cornerstones of what I'm looking for. It's not an essential ingredient for it, something to be considered extreme horror or splatterpunk, but it's just something that I personally strongly associate with it, and Aron Beauregard just never disappoints in that regard. And so I just found the descriptions of gore in this very satisfying and beautifully written for what it is. My personal favorite scene, without getting into it too much, if you've read it or if you're going to read it, these women have to go into the strip club after there is an incident there, and that was my favorite part to read. That was so crazy and so satisfying and just so unapologetically vile, and I really enjoyed that section of the book in particular. And I think something that this book also accomplished rather well is that the characters, they're not good people for the most part, but there is enough there for you to sympathize with that you can still kind of root for them. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed it. I'm disappointed that I didn't realize what I was missing out on through the audio book. Like I said, I don't believe I've read Shane McKenzie before. Aron Beauregard never disappoints in regards to splatterpunk. And I've never once accused that man of being on the tamer side of the spectrum. When you want something extreme, it's like some of his books are more extreme than others, of course, but it's still on that end as far as splatterpunk is concerned. Next up, we have The Old Lady by Kristopher Triana. Now, I am just going to be upfront with you that this one was my favorite. This is the third time that I've read Kristopher Triana, and I said recently, I believe in my last video, that I really was curious to read Daniel J. Volpe. I was really curious to read him again. And I feel the same way about Kristopher Triana. I'm really wanting to do another author focus video sometime soon, and I'm really torn between those two authors on who I want to do next. So, gosh, I don't know. I might have to just flip a coin or something. I'm very, very interested to read both of them again soon in abundance. As soon as I discovered the premise, I felt very confident that I was going to enjoy this story. This is about an old lady. It's a woman named Tracy in her 50s, which I feel is exactly the age she needed to be in order for her to be young enough to do the things that she does in this book, but old enough that some people would look at her and consider her an old lady. 50 seems a little young to me to be calling her an old lady, but you know. Now, Tracy was raised by her father, who was a Vietnam War veteran. They lived isolated in a cabin in the woods where he taught and trained Tracy from a young age how to survive in extreme situations. He was very convinced that, you know, she would need to be able to withstand being interrogated, and he taught her how to build traps and bombs and all these sorts of things. He taught her how to shoot weapons. He taught her how to just protect herself in very extreme situations, how to survive in the woods, how to track, how to withstand pain, to the point that his behavior would be considered abusive by most people, despite the fact that his intention was not to bring harm to her for the sake of bringing her harm. He never hurt her out of anger. He would hurt her to train her. In his mind, he was showing her love by teaching her how to protect herself. But what results from that is that Tracy grows up to be a very traumatized woman, and she becomes estranged from her father because she's like, well, this is fucked up, right? Then when her father passes, he leaves the cabin to her. So our story involves Tracy going back to this cabin. She has had a life away from her father that has not been all, sunshine and roses. She's done some time in prison. She's done some bad things, experienced some terrible things as well. It's been a hard life for Tracy, but she goes back to this cabin. Now, simultaneously, at the same time that she is going into the woods, going to her cabin, there is also this group of 4 teenagers that are trekking through the wilderness, trying to get to their own rented cabin. And they end up getting lost and stumbling upon a different cabin where they stumble upon a group of people who are participating in some sketchy activities. They're lost in the woods, so initially they're like, oh my gosh, people, thank God. But then they quickly realize that this is not the safe haven they were hoping it was, and that these people are not going to help them. The group ends up getting separated, and one of them flees from this area, and they are the one who ends up stumbling upon Tracy's cabin. Tracy ends up stepping up and going back with them to rescue the rest of the teenagers, and it quickly becomes a matter of Tracy using all the survival skills that she has gained up until this point in order to protect these kids and help them escape from this dangerous group. I love stories that take place in the wilderness. I love survival stories, and I love Tracy's character. She is so complex and well-rounded as a character. I loved her so much. I really appreciated the way that Kristopher Triana wrote these characters, where they are not always, because not all people are, but the people who are competent, who it makes sense that certain characters would be competent, they are intelligent and they make the sorts of conclusions that make sense for people to make if they know about surviving in the wilderness and all of that. But they're not infallible. They can't predict the future. They are not impervious. There's a line drawn in the sand distinguishing between knowledge and instinct, and that some people have one or the other and some people have both. And I think that that's something that was so well written, because there are characters in this book who have knowledge but don't have instincts, and vice versa. And you see how that affects the outcome of their individual storyline. There's some political commentary in here a little bit, but there's also stuff regarding her father having this trauma from his experiences in the war, passing down that trauma to Tracy. Not, again, he didn't have bad intentions, but what he thought was best was a result of trauma. And so that impacted Tracy. And so now, where she's put in a situation where she has the skills in order to survive this insane situation, it might be easy for her to think, well, it was all for the best then, right? Like, my old man was right. But it's also something where, would she have needed it if it wasn't taught to her in the first place? If she hadn't been put through all these things as a child, how her life might have turned out differently, and she may not have ever been put in a situation as an adult where she needed to use those skills. There's such a dignity in her vulnerability. She would have flashbacks to her youth, flashbacks to, points in her life where things were going well, or flashbacks to what happened that led to her going to prison and all of that. I found those parts hard to read. I found it hard to read those things happening to Tracy. For all her flaws, she's just she pulls on your heartstrings. This is just somebody who's had a hard life, but you can tell that there's just the foundation there is so good. Like, she's a good person who cares about people. I mean, she has nothing to do with these kids. She risks her life and does all of these things trying to protect these teenagers that she doesn't know. So you can't help but read her story and wonder what her life could have been if she had just had a more stable upbringing. And you get a little glimpse of that, of the life that she was almost able to create for herself, but then kind of slips through her fingers. Tracy is referred to in this book several times by one of the teenagers as their golem, which I've heard that word before, but I didn't necessarily understand it in this context. So I looked it up, and apparently a golem is something from Jewish folklore that it's artificial. It's something that's supposed to be made, like a person or whatever, that's made from clay, and then life is breathed into it through magic or supernatural means or whatever, but that the original concept or design is intended for the golem to protect or to help others, but it can become destructive when it's not controlled, which it perfectly describes Tracy, because despite her good intentions, she is traumatized and mentally unwell. So it's often hard for the teenagers to know whether she is a source of safety or a source of danger. It's complex because I don't think Tracy even fully knows. Tracy knows her intentions, but it's something where, the road to hell, right? So just everything about this was right up my alley. And like I said, I can't decide. I can't decide if I want to do Kristopher, Triana, or Daniel J. Volpe next. And oh gosh, I'll be a happy girl either way, I'm sure. Okay, next up we have American Rapture by C.J. Leede. This is about a teenage girl named Sophie who is raised in an extremely religious upbringing. Her her twin brother Noah, her parents discover some stuff about Noah that does not tickle their fancy. And so they end up having him sent away to a facility in an attempt to fix him, right? So Sophie is really lonely in her life with her very repressive Catholic upbringing, and she's at that age where she is starting to feel and look more like a woman rather than a child. Obviously, that's very scary for parents, especially religious parents, not wanting their daughter to embrace her sexuality in any way, especially at such a young age. The mother in particular, but both parents are making a very big attempt to stifle that in her, basically making her feel afraid of all the bad things that could possibly happen if she garners too much male attention, to the point that it gives Sophie a bit of a complex because she's struggling with her own feelings of attraction towards boys. I mean, she's a teenage girl, right? But this fear and this shame that she's experiencing for quite literally the most natural thing in the world, wanting people you're attracted to also be attracted to you. So she's just sort of dealing with religious trauma and inner turmoil and being a teenager and growing up and all this sort of normal-ish type stuff, right? But then a virus starts to spread across the states. This virus basically does have the effects of zombies to a degree, but it is more specific in the sense that it makes people voraciously horny first, presumably as a means to spread itself, that it's spread through bodily fluids and whatnot. And so it very quickly becomes a chaotic situation where families are attacking families. Sophie ends up having to flee her home and is alone. And her mission is to try to find her brother because she doesn't know where he is anymore with all this chaos happening. Along the way, she kind of partners up with, there's a police officer, and then there's just other people that they come across along the way, and they kind of band together trying to survive this virus spreading around. And it's one of those stories where it turns out that the bigger threat is not the virus, but it's coming from other people. That is the basic premise of the story. Now, things that I liked about this. First off, as just a complete personal note, this takes place in Wisconsin, which is where I'm from. So it was very fun for me to read this story and to hear all the little references to things that, are just local to me, talking about House on the Rock and cheese curds. And so that was just an especially fun thing for me personally. There's definitely a huge amount of commentary in this about religious trauma, to the point that I think it could very much just come across as not just commentary of Catholicism or Christianity in general. That I would say it would be fair to say that it kind of comes across as just being blatantly anti-religion, which maybe isn't her intention, but it is just like highly critical of that. A lot of this story takes place within the context of Sophie's inner monologue. She was raised in a very sheltered way. This virus makes people very sexually aggressive, right? And so you're dealing with that, but on top of the fact she's still a teenager who was going through these sorts of emotions and feelings on her own. And so now she has become increasingly afraid of those feelings, because it's like, is this a sign that I'm sick? Am I getting sick? That I'm, feeling attraction and lust towards this person or whatever. And so there's just even more fear and shame associated with any sort of attraction or sexuality. There's definitely something in here as well as far as the traditional roles that are expected of women, how we are, not just in religious. I mean, obviously this book has a lot of commentary on traditional religious perspectives, but beyond that, the beauty of women being so highly valued when it is something that we really aren't in much control out of. You choose if you take care of yourself, you choose how you present yourself, but you don't really choose your genes. You don't choose the base of how you look, and how the concept of virginity and losing value as a human being after you lose that, and the concept of that being something of your almost your soul value in the eyes of some people. It is nice to see the bonds that these people trying to look out for each other and find little moments of joy in the chaos, searching, not knowing where safety and security is, and just sort of blindly pursuing it, trying to find her brother even though she doesn't really know where he is. She isn't able to communicate with him, and so she's guessing where would he go? Is he even alive? She doesn't know for sure. This book, I thought, had a very beautiful build-up to the end. I really liked the final sentence or two. A perfect final touch to the rest of the story. I think we need to incorporate a new notice for you guys, where I'm not going to get into details and give spoilers about what the end result of this is, but I want you guys to know when there is a dog. So we're gonna let you know. Okay, and last up we have This Wretched Valley by Jenny Kiefer. Now again, I love stories that take place in the wilderness. So when I saw that this was about rock climbers, I was, ooh. Do you guys ever see those videos on YouTube about people climbing Mount Everest or climbing K2, or just dangerous mountain climbing situations, or sometimes it's cave diving and stuff like that? I love those. I love those videos. I watch them all the time. This is the type of book that starts off with the end. So we know from the beginning that these people who go into the woods don't make it back out. We know that there's a skeleton. We know that they're finding all these dead bodies, and there's some weird stuff going on with the skeletons, where they're found, the condition they're found in. It's all just a big mystery as far as what actually happened. And then we jump back in time and we're told the story of how and why this group went to the woods and how they all ended up perished. So there's this man named Clay who is looking into some new technology to help kind of scan the landscape and help you find the types of rocks that mountain climbers are looking to climb. He's in school trying to get his PhD, and he's using this device to write his dissertation on. He's also bringing his research assistant Sylvia to help him with the research and writing down all of the stuff that they're finding. They are also bringing a woman named Dylan and her boyfriend. And now Dylan is the mountain climber. So we got Clay, who's there to find the mountain, to find the big rock, the research assistant, Sylvia, the actual rock climber to climb it, and her boyfriend, who's just kind of there to help with Dylan's climbing. Now, Dylan is someone who has an online persona as a rock climber. She recently just got sponsored. I guess within rock climbing, that's a big thing, is if you are the first person to climb a specific rock and to kind of find the path that you're going to take to climb to the top. She's very excited about this opportunity with her sponsor to be the first to do this, and that this will be really good for her career, and that she's just very excited about the opportunity to be the first one to climb this. There are some red flags telling them before they get there that these woods are kind of sketchy, right? You know, they stop at a diner before they go in, and the waitress is like, oh, those woods are sketchy. And they're like, we're going. And then, you know, in a shocking turn of events, the woods turn out to be sketchy. And there are some supernatural elements to this story. They suffer with injuries, they suffer with getting lost and going in circles. They struggle with their equipment not working properly. There's just everything is going wrong. The woods kind of takes on a life of its own. So you have all the elements of a traditional survival story, but then there is this added element of the forest is actively working against them, trying to leave and get back to safety. There are some time jumps to like the 1700s to see it also being sketchy back then. I think the tone and the vibe of this is really nice. It's very kind of unsettling. You kind of struggle because sometimes it kind of feels really nice to be out in nature and that I'm a part of nature. Look at me, I'm out here doing my thing, right? But also you feel very small and not in control when you're out in nature like that, right? So when you add that natural feeling and impulses that you would have under those circumstances, on top of, well, now I'm in a place where you jump back in time and you see that people would try to plant food and it would rot on the vine. The land isn't good. Like there's just something wrong about this place. So in some ways, there is some overlap in themes between this and the last story. People grouping together, trying to survive extreme circumstances. It's funny because one of the primary differences between the group dynamics in those two books is that American Rapture, you have this group of strangers that are coming together and they bond very quickly. They are in survival mode, they are sticking together, and they are defending each other, and they are a unit, and it is them against the world. Versus this Wretched Valley, where the group dynamics are these people who already know each other, who have established foundational relationships, and they are all turning on each other. And so I think it's kind of those two separate things. It's a fun switch up. Pushed to the brink of your physical and mental capacities, certain things aren't going right and you start blaming each other. There are some intense emotions. I did enjoy this book. I do think that there is one death in particular that I just didn't feel fully satisfied with. And I guess it's who you could argue is if there's a main character, I guess you could argue that they're the main character. I just wasn't fully satisfied. I don't have a specific suggestion as to how to make it better. It's just that if you're going to make a character stand out and kind of make them seem as though they have some sort of unique role in things, then you want some sort of payoff for that. And I just didn't really get a sense of that. Like I thought I was going to with the way things were going. Yeah, I wasn't in love with the ending, but I did enjoy the journey. Now, overall, looking at these four books, I would say this Wretched Valley and American Rapture are both books that do not have that much gore and stuff in them overall, but what is there is mostly tailored towards the end of the books. Benjamin, it's Aron Beauregard. It's nasty all the way through. The old lady, there is some buildup, but there is, I forgot about that. There is some like some upsetting things. Some upsetting things happen in The Old Lady, and I could do without that. Okay, it's fine. I'm fine. There is a part that is particularly upsetting to me. I would say there is by far the most stuff. The most extreme horror elements are in Benjamin. Some of the most impactful ones. There's overall less, but still equally, if not more, impactful ones in The Old Lady. There is still some in American Rapture and This Wretched Valley, but just like less. The overall stories, I enjoyed reading all of these. None of these were a miss for me. Now, as far as who I think should have won, I would say it's between Benjamin and The Old Lady. My personal favorite was The Old Lady, but I think Benjamin is very true to the splatterpunk genre. I think it is a very ambitious project, the way that Shane McKenzie and Aron Beauregard put all these additional elements into it. So I would not be upset in the slightest if Benjamin won. As I said before, the winner was announced, and I have looked it up. And so the winner of the 2025 Splatterpunk Award for Best Novel was The Old Lady. So, I guess I was not the only one who loved Tracy and loved this story, and I think that that story is very deserving to win Best Novel. And this is also the third time that Kristopher Triana has won Best Novel at the Splatterpunk Awards. So overall, this was fun. Sometimes life gets in the way, and your hobbies and stuff have to take a bit of a back seat. So I do appreciate your continued patience with me, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel in terms of my schedule and all my stuff going on. So I have reason to believe that soon I will be able to kind of pump out my more regular content. So that's what I'm hoping for. And I do still plan to do the novella video. It was my intention to have all of these videos done already, but I think it kind of works out that I can just let you know who won at the end. And if you don't want to know, then you can just stop. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And maybe I'll see you the next time around. Bye. He then will arrange the bodies in a specific to it, passing down familial trauma